Now, Martin McGuinness, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamon.
Martin, you have had, and you still have, a hugely important position in Northern's executive, Deputy First Minister, and your contribution in that role is widely acknowledged, even by people who don't like Sinn Féin. Why are you prepared to give it up? To come down here to do a job that people feel is largely ceremonial and is a matter of ribbon cutting, to use the vernacular?
Well, I think first of all, one of the serious considerations that I had to give to the decision was the institutions, which are both power sharing and north-south in nature. And we have such a wealth of talent now at the Assembly. People have gained enormous experience over the course of recent years. I was absolutely satisfied that the foundation stone that Ian Paisley and myself and Peter Robinson and myself laid is rock solid, and that there is no threat whatsoever to the institutions, and that they will continue to go from strength to strength, whether I'm there or not.
So, Maurice Hayes, in the Irish Independent, who's a man well-regarded leader of the nationalist community and the North Senator, a former Senator, he wrote a critical piece, but not the kind of savage invective that you've been faced from other sources, in which he said, by doing this, you were jeopardising the work for peace in the North.
No, I don't think that's the case at all. I respect Maurice greatly, but I think his analysis of the situation is a bit off-centre. The reality is that we've made enormous progress over the course of the last 5 years. Remember, it's now, and sometimes people find it hard to believe, it's 17 years, over 17 years since the IRA ceasefire of 1994. And it's, I suppose, something like just over 5 years since Ian Paisley and I stood up first as First and Deputy First Minister. Ian stayed around for a year, was replaced by Peter Robinson, but we went through the full term of the Assembly without any difficulty whatsoever, against all of the predictions that had been made that it would collapse in no time. It didn't collapse because Peter and I were absolutely committed to ensuring that we drive forward to build a better future for all of our people. I respect his allegiance to what he calls the United Kingdom. I think he respected my allegiance isn't to the United Kingdom, but it is to the people of Ireland. And as a result of that, we have managed to have a positive and constructive working relationship. Now, I think that none of the decisions that I've taken in the course of the last number of weeks jeopardises any of that. I'm absolutely certain and confident about it. I would not, under any circumstances, have decided to contest the presidency of my country if I thought it would jeopardise what was the most important political negotiation ever to take place on the island of Ireland, which resulted in the Good Friday Agreement.
How much time did you take to reflect? When was the prospect of running for the presidency first mooted?
Well, just before the Sinn Féin Ardèche, a number of people...
Which is how long ago?
That's about 3 weeks ago now.
And did it come as a surprise to you that you were asked?
Well, first of all, I knew that there was a gathering momentum, that people felt that Sinn Féin should support the nomination of a candidate for the presidency. And once that was unstoppable, then people's thoughts turned to who the candidate should be. And at that stage, a number of names had been mentioned in the media. Mine wasn't one of them, but I suppose as people focused on the reality that Sinn Féin was going to support a nomination, I was then approached by a number of very senior people that was in the party who said that if Sinn Féin was going to support a candidate, the one they wanted to support was myself. So I said I would think about it. I went on a trade mission to the United States with Peter Robinson. We went to Los Angeles, San Diego, Chicago and New York. And I thought about it very, very carefully indeed. And on the Thursday before we came home, I decided that I was prepared to do it. Why did I decide I was prepared to do it? Because, you know, I have friends and indeed relations in different parts of Ireland. I have friends in every single one of Ireland's 32 counties. And travelling around over the course of recent times, I can see the absolute despair that there is within people about the current state of the economy.
But the presidency doesn't allow you to do anything about that in a tangible and practical way in terms of policy.
No, well, I think that the presidency can be a symbol of how things can change, and I think change is needed. And what I was prepared to do was stand on a platform which was different from that proposed by whoever else would contest the presidency.
Okay.
And to stand in a way that would make it absolutely clear that I believe, as a result of the enormous changes in the north and the very bad economic situation in the south, that we needed a conversation about a new Ireland, about the creation of a new republic, and how we could move forward to show that people in very high places are at long last going to stand by the suffering people of Ireland at a time of economic gloom and doom.
Gay Mitchell, I ask you a roughly similar question. You are an MEP. You're in that role. You have substantive work to do. You've been in Europe now how long?
7 years.
In your 8th year. Why run for the presidency now?
Well, I have a set of beliefs that I want to bring to bear on the situation that we're in now in our country. The presidency is a one-person institution. Unlike the Dáil, the Senate, the government and the courts, where there are a number of people and where they perform their duties openly and outwardly, the president is up in the Phoenix Park on his or her own as a one-person institution, the third part of the Oireachtas with the Dáil and Senate. The president is part of the national Parliament. That's what the Constitution says. I have enormous experience in our national Parliament, in local government, as Lord Mayor, as Minister for the IFSC, as Minister for European Affairs in Europe. And I believe right now, far from telling people that we can heal all their problems, we've got to tell people that with every right comes a responsibility, and that if we want social justice, we've got to create the wealth for that social justice. We've got to repair the damage that has been done in Europe. The European Union has been opposed.
Who did the damage, Gay?
Well, I think a lot of laziness did the damage.
Can we be clear that the people who are paying across Europe, in Greece and in Ireland and in Portugal in particular, the taxpayers, the ordinary worker, and indeed the people who are not paying tax because they're out of work, they didn't cause the damage, did they?
Nor did Europe. The damage caused to us was caused by misgovernment. Let's be absolutely clear on that. In our good days, we did what a housewife wouldn't do running our home. We didn't provide for the bad day coming. We said party on. Let's not blame anybody else on that. But in the meantime, what we also did was we became a bit arrogant with the institutions in Europe. Ministers didn't network as much as they should and didn't keep in touch with people. You know,
are you referring to Charlie McCreevy going out there and telling them that we're the second richest country in the world, and if they followed our policies, they'd be doing a lot better, which is exactly what he said to the European Parliament?
Well, I don't want to particularise it, but there is an attitude that was there. You look at the European Union. I believe we didn't become truly sovereign until we joined the European Union. I became interested in politics at a very young age. Gareth Fitzgerald was a senator at the time. He wasn't a TD. And he was talking about Northern Ireland. And the solutions he was talking to about Northern Ireland were the solutions we reached in 1973 and 74 in the Sunningdale Agreement. And then in 1998, the Sunningdale Agreement for slow learners, because people didn't pursue Gareth Fitzgerald's vision. His vision was of a united...
Which people didn't pursue it?
Well, I think a lot... Well, the people who killed 3,000 of our fellow Irishmen, some of them very ruthlessly, some of them in terrible circumstances. But what I want to say to you is this: I chose a different path. My father died when I was 5. I was one of 9 children. My mother, widowed at 47, went out to work. Martin talks about people with bad backgrounds. Myself and my brother have a very difficult start in life. We didn't take to the gun. We took to youth work. We took to community work. We took to politics. And we took the road that ultimately led to success. And the people who participated in this success were not just the people who put down their guns, and I welcome them putting down their guns, but there were the people over the years. People like Albert Reynolds doesn't get an awful lot of credit. Gareth Fitzgerald, Peter Barry, Dick Spring. People that sometimes we don't like. People like Bertie Ahern and the recent Taoiseach, Brian Cowan, as well as others. And there are people now claiming this responsibility. For 30 years we tried to get these people to take their foot off our necks, and that was the reality of life. What we need now...
Well, which people?
I'm talking about the terrorists, the IRA in particular.
Well, now you've raised this. I wasn't going to, in the interest of fairness...
Well, you asked me.
I'm going to ask you something else now, because the Minister for the Environment, arguably the Director of Elections for Fine Gael at the last election, and arguably the most influential cabinet minister, has come out with some remarkable remarks which feature in the Sunday Independent today. He doesn't want, he says, a terrorist in the Áras. He directs this at Martin McGuinness. He says a number of other things. For example, he says that can we assume, for example, the close associates of Mr. McGuinness, such as Mr. Slab Murphy, would not be invited to special garden parties in the Oris? Would you endorse that?
I think you should invite him in and talk to him about his views. I'll say,
no, but hold on now.
You talk to him
from
about
your party.
You talk to him about his views. I'll tell you my views. My views are that I don't know this man. This man says he's not a member of the IRA and hasn't been since 1974. That's not true, Martin. You say you're not running for Sinn Féin. That's not true, Martin. You say you live on the average industrial wage. You earned about 200 grand last year. Publish your piece 60. It's not true, Martin. Who is the true Martin McGuinness? Or you can shake your head to
what are you going to say?
Tell the people, who is the true Martin McGuinness? We want to put somebody in the park. We need to know who that person is, what their capacity is, what they're going to do while they're there. And the person who goes there will have supreme command of the Defence Forces. It's not just a term. If you look at the Defence Acts, it says under the direction of the President. That person will be part of our national parliament. I do not want to indulge in the questions that you just quoted there. But those questions that I have just asked here, they're valid questions.
Okay, can I be clear then? So you're disassociating yourself from Phil Hogan's remarks, correct?
Phil Hogan is entitled to make any remarks he wants. I will make my remarks. Nobody's going to put words in my mouth. The questions I've asked of Martin now are valid, decent, proper questions. And I think they should get some answers. And incidentally, others should be asking these questions. I've been asked enough questions. People should be asking questions that are relative to the political office we're seeking to hold. I don't know anything about Martin's personal life or anything of that kind. But in relation to the political office we seek to hold, I think we are entitled to know what are the qualifications for the person for that. And Martin's pretending if he goes up there that he'll be up there without Sinn Féin. You won't, Martin. You'll be there with Sinn Féin. That's the reality.
Before you answer that, can I ask you if you have been surprised, shall we say, by the savagery of the attacks on you in southern media? And by this time by a minister in the current cabinet, a very, very influential minister. He says extraordinary things. For example, that our foreign direct investment will be threatened if American multinationals see what he terms a terrorist in the presidency. This is heavy-duty stuff.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, I'm not surprised that some elements, particularly within the political establishment and within elements of the media that support the political establishment, would resort to what amounts effectively to a dirty tricks operation. The reality is this. On the day of my candidature being announced for the presidency of my country, I was in Wall Street, sitting in the New York Stock Exchange with senior executives that I've got to know over the course of the last 5 years. People like Duncan Niederher, Chief Executive, who on his first day as Chief Executive of the New York Stock Exchange invited Ian Paisley and myself to be there with him. We have struck up an extraordinary friendship with him, and as a result of that, and of course, hard-headed business, Duncan Niederher announced the opening of a new office in Belfast, which is going to employ 500 people. Recruitment has already started, and several hundred people are working. On our trade mission to the United States, Peter Robinson and I were received at the highest level by senior vice presidents and executives of Warner Brothers, HBO, Allstate, Sony. We opened a new first derivatives office in New York, a Newry-based company which employs hundreds of graduates, which are now going worldwide and due to be a major brand throughout the world. So this is absolute nonsense, total and absolute nonsense. Peter Robinson and I have brought thousands of jobs to the north as a result of our contacts with senior executive in multinational companies in the United States of America. So Phil Hogan, wants to catch himself on and wants to deal with the reality. It shows how little he knows about the North and how little he knows about my working relationships with the unions. The next point I want to make is this here. It's just some of the bitterness and vitriol that I and others have had to listen to, which comes out of the mouths and the pens of some people here who've been writing about me over the course of the last couple of weeks. I don't hear any of that from many unionist politicians in the North. They are more extreme than the unionist political establishment, who see me as a peacemaker and see me as someone who stood up in the aftermath of the killing of 2 soldiers in Antrim and faced down those who would try to plunge us back to the past, who saw me stand up alongside Kate Carroll when her husband Stephen, a PSNI officer, was shot dead, and saw me stand up alongside Nuala Kerr whenever Ronan was shot dead and was blown up in Omagh. So I let the people of Ireland decide, and Gay raises questions out on the stumps, talking to people in Dublin, in Cork, in Kildare, all over the island of Ireland. Nobody asked me, Martin, when did you leave the IRA? Nobody, you could count on the fingers of one hand, the people in the north, who asked me, when did you leave the IRA? Because I think people know that I have been at the heart of all of the enormous changes that have happened in the north. Gay talks about what I earned last year. I don't know where he gets the £200,000 from, because the wages of the Deputy First Minister in the North is £112,000, and I've earned that each year for the last 5 years, but I don't see it. It goes straight into a Sinn Féin account, and I'm paid a subsistence out of it, and I'm willing to allow my bank account to be open, and I'm sure Sinn Féin are willing to allow their bank accounts to be open to show that that is the case. The person who drove me in my capacity as Deputy First Minister to Belfast every morning and back to do my job gets exactly the same wage as I get, because I am not in it for the money.
You see, the problem,
and I'm not a career politician, and I do believe that if people want to fight a presidential campaign, and I've resisted getting into dirt and dirt with the rest. Well, if people want to fight a campaign, they should fight a clean campaign.
Okay, Mitchell. Now, let me just deal with some.
Just before you do, how much did you earn last year?
94,000.
And how much did you claim in expenses?
About the same.
The same. And in pension contributions?
I don't know what the figure is, but let me just say this about Martin. Okay, Martin brought up this figure. Your pal Martin brought up this figure. I don't like the question. I think you're asking your pal Martin. You've written about this man in such favourable circumstances. I think you should be a little bit more impartial with the way you're conducting this interview here this morning. Why didn't you ask this man what was his MP salary?
Hold on a minute.
What was his MLA salary?
This conversation
on top of his ministerial salary. No, let me. Why didn't you ask him that question? Why did you ask him that question?
You've asked the question, let me answer.
No, I want to deal with some of the propaganda you've raised. You raised the issue of you being on the average industrial wage. Nobody else. You brought up this issue. Here is the point. My salary is also paid into an account, and I make donations to charity out of that. I do them quietly, and everybody else in their lives does them quietly. This is the propaganda. Martin brings up these things, and he wonders why. Martin brings up these issues. Martin brings up these issues, and he wonders why. No, you're not sharing it. Oh no, you're not. You should be sharing it, but you're not sharing it. You're interrupting one of us, and you're not interrupting the other.
Hold on. First of all, I didn't interrupt you, but just
interrupting me.
For the record and for the listeners' record, and they'll make their own judgment. People are much more intelligent than you might think they are.
Well, that's another biased comment on your part. You should excuse yourself.
You're the person who raised the subject of Martin McGuinness's salary.
Martin raised the subject. Martin has made a political issue of the fact.
In this conversation?
Martin has made a political issue of the fact. I raised questions of issues he has raised. Not the issues that Phil Hogan has raised, the issues that Martin has raised. Martin says...
Let him have his say.
Martin says he's on the average industrial wage. We know that Martin drew 200 grand in salary last year and about the same in expenses last year.
How do you know that?
Because your salary as an MP, MLA and Minister are a matter of record. And incidentally, let me just go on about some of the other issues. Martin says he's not running for Sinn Féin. We all know that that's not true. Martin says he left the IRA in 1974. That's not true. And here's the situation. I went to address the committee of the centre in the Stormont Parliament on the day that the two DUP ministers resigned. And on that very day, a DUP man came to me and says, I won't be going into the committee or addressing because it's been chaired by a Sinn Féin man. Anyway, the only way this problem will be solved is when Sinn Féin and the DUP are empowered together. You are empowered together after 30 years working the Sunningdale Agreement because the Unionists and the SDLP have been sidelined. You have won the lottery north of the border, and you want, Martin, this is my view of this, you want to go to the Oris where it's just a single person institution without telling us the truth about the questions I have raised. And I'm raising these questions because you raised them yourself. Now, none of them are outside the political realms. These are questions you raised. You in your press statement said on your first statement, and you keep saying it, that you're on the average industrial wage. You drew a huge salary last year. If you want to give that to Sinn Féin, that's your business. If I want to give it to Trócaire, that's my business. But don't be going around with this, and then when somebody questions you on it, saying, oh, he's hitting me now with the baby may be in my hands. For heaven's sake, you raise the issue.
I have made it absolutely clear where the Deputy First Minister's salary goes, and that can be proven conclusively, and those books can be opened. Gay on 2 occasions mentioned that I draw an MP salary. I do not draw an MP salary. Why do I not draw an LP salary? Because the British government will not pay me, because I am an abstentionist MP. I am someone who will not take an oath of allegiance to the Queen of England, and as a result of that, the British government and the Houses of Parliament have refused to
fair
pay
enough,
me.
I'd say.
Well, that's a matter for themselves, but that has been the case since 1997.
You get expenses
when I was first. Now you're changing.
Do you get
tax.
expenses, Martin?
Now you're changing
Do you
tax.
draw down expenses from there, Martin? Answer the question.
No, but would you withdraw?
You're saying you don't get money from the Queen.
It just shows how ignorant you are.
No,
it just shows
that when you're put to the test.
You said on 2 occasions that I get an MP salary.
It shows when you're put to the test that the mask slips. The mask slips and we see the nasty side of you, Martin. Answer the question. Did you draw expenses from the Queen? You said you didn't draw a salary from the Queen. Did you draw expenses from the Queen?
But hold on a minute. You said I did draw a salary.
You're the one now who said you don't draw money from the Queen. Did you draw expenses from the Queen?
You think you're going to win this argument by talking me down?
I'm saying to you, stop the propaganda. I'm not afraid of you, Martin.
Do you think you're going to win this debate by talking me down?
Hold on. Now, in the interest of
this argument by talking me down?
Martin Gay, in the interest of the listeners, I'm going to moderate this in my own way. And in the radio programs I've done down the years, going back many, many years, I don't allow people to overshout each other, and I don't allow noise to get in the way of reason. So can we stop this nonsense? We're going to take an ad break now, and when we come back from the ad break, we're going to have a proper conversation with, I hope, fairness and a respect for the listeners of this programme.
I noticed from the thing here that you're looking at me. You have to be fair as well and share this impartially. Eamon, I'm asking you now, please, chair this fairly.
You're still on air now,
I know that.
What accusation are you making?
When you were addressing those questions, you're addressing them to me. We know that you've written about Martin very favourably. All I ask you is, I came in here this morning because you told me there would be a fair debate here. Just be fair.
Unfair?
When we come back,
can you point to the unfairness?
I think the interruptions of me this morning will show that you have been one-sided.
Okay. We'll let the listeners judge that, and we'll take an break now. Welcome back to this special edition of the Dunphy Show. We have in studio with us 2 presidential candidates, Gay Mitchell of Fine Gael and Mark McGuinness, who is Sinn Féin, of course. We invited others, but they couldn't for one reason or another join us. Some of your comments, very uncomfortable listening this morning. I really don't think Eamon is being impartial in this debate. That's from Carol in Swords. Eamon, you're usually fair, though today you are not, and need to make Martin answer Gay's questions. That's from Mary Day. I never realised Mitchell had such character. He's getting my vote. He can stand up to provos and dodgy pundits. And to balance that, I should say, a lot of people are texting in and they don't like the aggression that's coming from Gay. But there's a balance out there. So let's continue with the substantive matters. Martin McGuinness, the question of the Constitution and the President's role as the guardian of the Constitution. People, one caller in particular, has said that for most of your life as a Republican, you didn't regard the Irish Constitution as legitimate. Indeed, and now people think it's inappropriate, this particular listener, that you should seek the position of guardian of a Constitution you previously regarded as illegitimate.
Well, I mean, I am an Irish Republican and I am a Democrat, and I was born into a community in the north, in Derry City, for example, which is an overwhelmingly nationalist Catholic city, which had been gerrymandered by the Unionists, where we were treated not just like second-class citizens, but treated effectively like dirt. We had a parliament in Belfast, which was controlled by the Unions for 50 years. Eddie McAteer and many good people like him representing the Nationalist Party went to that assembly. And all of the time that they were there, only one piece of legislation they could get passed, and it was called the Wild Birds Act. So I came from a very hugely unjust system of government in the north.
The question, Martin, is this, that as you know at the time, I was a vehement and robust opponent of terrorism for 10 years, writing in the Sunday Independent and indeed in the Sunday Tribune. So there's no question where I stand on terrorism.
Absolutely.
The question is, was terrorism an appropriate response rather than other forms of dissent?
Yeah, well, people took a decision in the aftermath of the introduction of internment by the British government and by the torture of internees, the shooting of 27 people in my city, 14 of whom died on Bloody Sunday, that they would fight back against the British Army. I would contend that it was, at that time, absolutely legitimate and no different from what young people in South Africa did or young people in the Middle East affected by the Palestinian situation. But nobody should be under any illusions whatsoever.
People would say, Martin,
when you ask me about the Constitution, nobody should be under any illusions about my commitment to upholding the Constitution and indeed upholding the very important agreements that I have been with others at the heart of over the course of recent times, i.e. the Good Friday Agreement, the St Andrews Agreement and the Hillsborough Agreement. And of course, I was the person who put the legislation through Stormont to ensure the transfer of powers on policing and justice from London to this island. And I have stood foursquare behind the PSNI, and I stand foursquare behind the Gardaí, and I also stand foursquare behind the Constitution of this state. But that does not prevent me as an Irish Republican, because the Constitution allows for, I think under Article 3, the President to be involved in a process which is about trying to bring about effectively the reunification of Ireland by peaceful and democratic means. And I am absolutely committed to that. And I think Mary McAleese and Martin McAleese, who have done a fantastic job in the Irish, have worked very, very hard. For example, bringing the loyalist and unionist community into the Irish, but also into the political process. And isn't it absolutely wonderful that we're sitting here on a weekend whenever Martin McAleese is about to go off to the United States of America with very senior members of the UDA? Because that is something that I also advocated, that it was very, very important that people from within the unionist and loyalist community be welcomed by Irish America and by the establishment in the United States of America. I think all of that is good. It broadens people's minds. So that's where I come from. I stand as a law and order person, as someone who is totally and absolutely dedicated to ensuring that we never ever see conflict on this island again. And I think I've done a pretty good job when you consider that there's been 800 years of it. The Good Friday Agreement has changed everything. Earlier, Gay referred to the Sunningdale Agreement. Sunningdale Agreement didn't even mention the word equality. But the Good Friday Agreement, the Sunningdale Agreement didn't even mention the word equality once. But the Good Friday Agreement mentions it dozens of times. So all has changed, and I am the epitome of that change, because coming from the community that I came from, where we were treated as second-class citizens, I am now seen as the epitome of equality in the North, by dint of the fact that I sit in the office of First and Deputy First Minister alongside Peter Robinson, totally equal positions.
The only reason Martin sits in the office he's sitting in is because he's still alive, and because people like Garrett Fitzgerald and many Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil and Labour and other politicians down through the years kept striving for a political solution, which eventually we found. The Sunningdale Agreement in 1974 gave everything and some more things than the Good Friday Agreement has given us. Martin doesn't want people to go over his past, but Martin keeps going over his past himself and drawing up favourable things about himself.
Isn't that what all the candidates do, guys?
Martin doesn't want to talk about Frank Hegarty. He doesn't want to talk about Jean McConville. No, I didn't interrupt you once, Martin.
Oh, indeed you did.
No, not when you were speaking the last moment. Now, come back.
I won't interrupt you.
No, this is your propaganda. This is what you've been taught when you come in here with your propaganda. But we're asked not to bring up these things. Look, these guys stopped when they got the SDLP and the Unionists out, and when they and the DUP were given the keys of the and they're in office in Northern Ireland in perpetuity. Now, let's deal with the question you asked about the Constitution. First of all, Article 4 of the Constitution says that the name of the state is, in English, Ireland. Martin refuses to call it Ireland. He calls it the 26 counties and talks about the 32 counties. And it doesn't... The fact is that the President is head of state. This state, the state of the Republic of Ireland. That's what the President's job is. The President has a number of roles. But I want to emphasise this. When the President is elected, the President has a direct mandate, the President is out of sight, and the President is a one-person institution. Those of us who have behaved and participated in the democratic process over the years, winning and losing losing elections. Do you know, I was Shadow Minister for Justice, Health, Foreign Affairs twice, Transport, Tourism, Public Service. We were in opposition. We lost all the elections. I had to accept it. Didn't get paid a juice for it. I accepted it. But in Northern Ireland, these guys are permanently in office. No matter what happens, they are permanently in office.
Do you disapprove of the arrangements?
No. What I'm saying is they won the lottery, and having won the lottery, to now paint their own background as if they were the people that brought us peace. They're the people whose feet we got off our necks, and that's the reality of it. Now, I won't deny that Martin in the end played a part in that. He did. But stop making yourself out to be Matt Talbot or Nelson Mandela or anybody else, Martin. The reality of it is this: you are still, and this is the real difficulty I have with you, you're still not facing the truth. You're still saying you left the IRA in 1974. You're still saying you're not running for Sinn Féin. You're still saying you don't draw. It's all propaganda, Martin, and that's what it's about. Let's talk about the issues of the president.
Okay.
Let me go on now.
You've just come out with a diatribe there, what I would describe as a diatribe.
The Broadcasting Tribunal will be very interested in the way you're conducting this, and your listeners as well.
Well, my listeners are, yes. And that's
I'm dealing with both of you here now. This is the reality now, is that I'm dealing with two people.
You're recycling allegations that have been made for the last fortnight. Let me ask you a question about our problems at the moment, and particularly the bailout. If you'd have been in the Oris on the night, or the morning, when legislation to guarantee the bank bailout came through, what would you have done?
The President would have no role in it. The President, if it's a money bill, the President has no role in it.
Mm-hmm. This was legislation.
If it's certified in a certain way as being an important bill, the President has no role in it.
Would you have convened the Council of State?
No, this is...
No, he can, the President can actually. You're factually wrong about that.
I'm not factually wrong about that.
We have our fact checkers on.
If there is a money bill, or a referendum bill coming before the President cannot convene a...
By a money bill is a revenue-raising tax bill, a budget.
The money bill, for your information, is what the Chorus certifies as a money bill.
Right.
Now, so...
Was this a money bill? Is this what you're saying?
In my view, the President would have been really irresponsible to intervene in not knowing all the facts in such a short time. And the reality is that these are decisions for the government and the Parliament of the day. And anybody who expects that they go to the Phoenix Park and they're going to be Minister for Industry and Jobs and all of that, they won't be.
That's not the question I asked you.
I told you, I gave you the answer to the question. It's a matter for the government and the Parliament of the day. Have you got a difficult question for Mr. McGuinness here you might like to put to him?
I'm going to ask him the same question.
Oh, good.
Martin, if that piece of legislation came, an unprecedented, and the Article 24 of the Constitution is the article in question, what would you have done?
Well, you might find it strange, but
Sinn Féin, of course, voted for the bank guarantee.
I absolutely agree with what Gay has just said, because in terms of a bill...
You did vote, your party did vote in favour of that bank guarantee.
At the beginning, and then changed their position whenever they realised the extent and the damage that would do. But I mean, I'm not here to defend Sinn Féin's position. I'm here to put up my stall. And Gay has raised a number of issues. You've raised the issue of whether or not the President has a right to call together the Council of State and refer a money bill to the Supreme Court. And I'm agreeing with Gay Mitchell. My understanding is exactly the same as his. But, you know, what you have to remember is this, and what Gay has to remember in the course of all of this. You know, I sit on the North-South Ministerial Council. I'm the longest serving minister, North and South, on the North-South Ministerial Council. I've been there from the very beginning, at the start, as Minister of Education, and under the auspices of the Irish Government and the Northern Executive in the North. Whenever the North-South Ministerial Council was convened, I sat at every single meeting with the previous government in Farmley and with the present government in Farmley, and Peter Robinson and I and Enda Kenny have gone before the media in the aftermath of those meetings to explain the decisions, the joint governmental decisions that we took in relation to All Ireland projects. So I think people in the North listening to this, and some of the commentary that has been made, will say that this is all hypocrisy of the highest order. You're interrupting me, Gay, and I didn't interrupt you.
Well, I'll sit here quietly.
People in the North, including many unionists, will say that this is hypocrisy of the worst kind, and I think that it's very ill-becoming of the art of peacemaking that in the course of the presidential campaign we're seeing people resort to the sort of language that nowadays unionists in the North... That unionists in the North...
Let Gay Mitchell...
Okay. But let me make the final point, that unionists in the North don't use now.
Let me deal with this first of all. Martin raises a very interesting point about him being the longest serving member. Your leadership of Sinn Féin is longer serving than Castro was in Cuba, because you're just not a democratic party. That is the reality. In other parties, do you know the other leaders have come and gone in Fine Gael in that time, and Fianna Fáil and other political parties? You've been there because you control from the centre.
So why is he
and you?
now
we're.
But that's the question. Why is he in the North-South Ministerial Council with us?
Did I interrupt you?
But go on, that question,
Martin.
Because
is this going to be a debate?
Because we are constitutionalist. We will take the law as it is. We have always worked with the law as it is. But you're there almost in perpetuity. And this was what this...
Because I'm elected?
No, this is it.
Okay, we'll take
an
break now.
Listen, hold on a second.
Finish, go on.
Look, let me make a few points here. First of all, it's time we stop talking about the past. Martin wants to talk about his version of the past.
No, I'm not allowing this.
And he's drawing me...
I'm not allowing you to...
And he's drawing me
I'm not
into
going
this
to allow
controversy.
this. We're going to take an ad break
You're
now.
going to have to apologise for your behaviour. You're a disgraceful chairman.
Take an ad break.
You're absolutely disgraceful.
Take an ad break, Dara.
You're disgraceful.
You're making a fool of yourself.
You're a disgrace.
Welcome back to a very special edition of the programme, and it's turning out to be even more special than special. My guests this morning are Mark McGuinness, who's the presidential candidate for Sinn Féin, although he says he's running for himself, and Gay Mitchell, who is the presidential candidate for Fine Gael. Gay, before we went to the ad break, you felt you weren't getting a fair break, and you wanted to respond.
I said what I've said.
And get down to the real issues. What do you think the real issues are?
I've said what I said. Martin keeps bringing up the past and giving his version of the past, and then doesn't expect us to respond to give a different version. I think the real issues are the state of the country. We're at a very important crossroads. I think we're on the cusp of recovery, but I think the next time out we've got to do what the 1916 proclamation said, not just prosperity, but prosperity and happiness. And I believe if we pursue the sort of direction that I want us to pursue, not promising people that they can have everything that they want, but saying to people, look, if you take your responsibilities in accordance with your ability, if you're not able to take that responsibility, then we won't ask you to shoulder it. And with that will go rights. If you want social justice, let's encourage the enterprising spirit. I want to take up issues like why it is we had the highest suicide in the country at the time of our greatest material wealth. I want to raise those issues, and I think the President can do. In fact, I understand, since I started raising this issue in every major speech I've made, that Mary McAleese has actually started work on it. Dan Neville tells me that there are actually 600 people per year who died from suicide. That's 2 large plane loads of people. If that happened once per year, there would be a national inquiry into it. It's happening every year, and we're not doing anything about it. Now, the President, when he or she takes office, puts his or her hand on the Bible, swears to uphold the Constitution and law, and to pursue the welfare of the people. I want to work with the government of the day in upholding the Constitution and the law, in encouraging the enterprising spirit, in networking in Europe to mend fences, because Europe is the best place for us to sell our products and where we have a real say. I believe we became really sovereign the day we joined Europe. Up until then, the British Chancellor of the Exchequer set our interest rates, set the value of our currency. Our biggest export wasn't agricultural product, it was people. When we joined the European Union, the Secretary General of the Commission is Irish. The Secretary General before her was Irish. We've one minister just like Germany and France. If the people in 1916 could have looked forward and said we've fulfilled 6 presidencies of the European Union so successfully, they would have been very proud, and I'm proud. And I don't like people knocking and rubbishing Europe. Europe has been good for us. We forget where we came from. When I started first, I had 1,000 signatures in Crumlin alone of people waiting for telephones. So what I want us to do is this. I want us, the President, to work with the government and the enterprise to try and network in Europe, to use my international experience in the European Parliament, but I also want to work at home for the welfare of the people, and I want to start with this issue of suicide. What can we do to turn this around?
Well, you just have 2 minutes. I just point out, Gay, go on, Martin McGuinness in 2 minutes, but we'll have time after our ad break in this bulletin.
Well, I want to be a beacon of hope for the future. I want to, in the course of my
What do you think the real issues are, Martin?
The real issues are the very dire economic circumstances that the vast majority of the people of Ireland are living in at this time as a result of enormous greed and selfishness over recent times. And I want to be someone who stands with the ordinary people. I want to be an inclusive president, someone who is a beacon of hope for the future, someone who recognises the distress and pain in all of those people who lost their jobs, mass unemployment, mass emigration from these islands, people who are finding it very, very difficult to get proper support for disability, for those people who find it difficult to get support within the educational establishments, within the health service, and all those people who are very angry out there at the political establishment and the way in which the situation has been mishandled. The sovereignty of this country has been undermined grievously by the involvement of the IMF and the ECB, and the austerity measures which many people now around the globe are saying, including President Obama himself, do not represent the best way forward. So I want to be a president that stands with the ordinary people, but I want to be someone who leads by example. And I think it's quite legitimate to say, whatever about the criticism that comes from the side, that I am prepared to do the job for the average wage, not even the average industrial wage, for the average wage. And I can actually prove categorically in all of the money that I've earned in the past where that money goes. I'm prepared to open those books for everyone.
Okay, we're going to take an ad break now, and then our 12 o'clock news bulletin, and then we'll come back and continue this special edition of the programme with Gay Mitchell and Martin McGuinness.